Kenyans for Somalia, aid initiative launched to assist victims of the world's deadliest bomb attack in recent history. Members of the African Union Legislative Assembly, the Pan-African Parliament, are questioning why the continent has abandoned them. A new crisis in the making in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as the electoral body says it can only organize an election after 500 days. And tonight, we are kicking ball, going behind the losses and heartbreak in African football. To discuss that last bit on our highlight is Nick Mwendwa, once again, who's the FKF president, as well as Robin Toskin, who's sports editor with the Standard newspaper. If you're just joining us, of course, the program begins right now. This is your favorite Pan-African show, the Bottomline Africa. Let's take a look at our Twitter poll tonight, and we're asking you, do you think the world is giving Somalia enough support towards stability? Let me just take that again. Do you believe the world is giving Somalia enough support towards stability? Of course, this comes hot on the heels on what happened on Saturday. The deadliest blast took there, claiming the lives of about 300 people. 500 more were injured. Some have been airlifted to Nairobi, while others have been airlifted to Turkey. We'd like to hear your response or feedback on this. And remember to use our hashtag #BottomlineAfrica. Our Twitter handle is at KTN News. You can as well tweet me at Yusuf Ibra. Now, top on our bulletin tonight, and Somalia ended its second of 3 days of national mourning declared by President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, but is still calling for donations of blood and funds to victims of Saturday's attack. There's still no immediate claim of responsibility, although the Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab, which is allied to Al-Qaeda, stages regular attacks in the capital and other parts of the country. Meanwhile, security officers of the African Union mission in Somalia, well known as AMISOM, are assessing the damage and identifiers of support even as massive cleanup operation begins. More than 300 people were killed by twin bomb blasts that struck Busy Junction in the heart of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Officials said marking the deadliest attack since an Islamist insurgency began in the year 2007.
You can see the destruction around. So many people have died. We have not yet established the number of the people that have died. And we've been informed that some people are still trapped up in the rubble and they have been calling, but their batteries have gone off, and all efforts are in place to make sure that we get the survivors from the rubble. It's a cowardice action by the terrorists, the Al-Shabaab. This is to coerce the civilian population into, fearing them and, supporting them. But it's a cowardice act, and we shall defeat all this.
In the meantime, Kenya has launched the Kenya for Somalia initiative, a humanitarian endeavor to assist the people of Somalia caught in the horrific attack last Saturday. The Kenyan government has already donated 11 tons of assorted medical supplies to that country. The medical supplies airlifted from Kenya were handed over to the Federal Minister of Health and Social Services, Fauzia Abikar, by the Kenyan ambassador to Somalia, retired Major General Lucas Tumbo. In the meantime, Kenya has begun evacuating 31 injured Somalis from Mogadishu for specialized treatment right in Nairobi. The evacuation exercise is being undertaken by the Kenya Red Cross. This comes as several people turned up at the Eastleigh suburbs for a blood donation drive in aid of the injured in Somalia.
To be admitted in Kenyatta Hospital, and those who have spinal injuries, will take them to the spinal hospital in Nairobi. So we are here to say we are very sorry for what happened. Please, we pray that God grants the necessary fortitude for you to endure the great loss.
the pay bill number will be availed to all the media houses so that you can help us reach out and get as much support as we can for the people of Somalia.
Well, earlier we told you that hundreds of Kenyans and Somali natives stand up at Eastleigh in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, today to donate blood for the Mogadishu bombing victims. Now, the campaign was launched by social activist and businessman Ahmed Mohammed, who now joins us live from the Little Mogadishu, as Eastleigh is commonly referred to. Ahmed, good evening. Good to see you. Welcome to the program. And how would you rate today's initiative, that of blood donation?
Thank you, Yusuf, for having me. First of all, I want to send, on behalf of the Eastleigh community at large, our condolences to the families and friends of those who were horrifically killed in Mogadishu. It was a heinous act, a barbaric act, and we condemn it. And we say sorry to our brothers and sisters in Mogadishu. Coming back to your question, today's exercise, hundreds of people turned up to donate blood. And we were all overwhelmed by the generosity of the Kenyan people.
Well, Ahmed, I understand Eastleigh is also referred to as the Little Mogadishu, and apparently Eastleigh also suffered some sort of attacks in the hands of these militants. So it also affected business, I remember then. How did Eastleigh bounce back? I can see people busy behind you. And what will you advise the people of Mogadishu at this time?
Well, Eastleigh is used to, it has had its fair share of terrorism or terror-related activities, but we have bounced back. Since 2013, we haven't had any incident of terror-related incident. We have bounced back, thanks at large to the security forces and the community coming together and joining hands in eradicating the menace. Terrorism is an abhorrent activity. We've had several incidents in Kenya, for example, the Westgate Mall attack, which was really bad. But we have never had an incident of the magnitude of Mogadishu, where hundreds of people died, other hundreds are injured, and that really shook the community here in Eastleigh. And as you just rightly said, Eastleigh is referred to Little Mogadishu because we've got people from across the border here doing business. We've got a huge number of refugee population that stays in Eastleigh, and therefore there is always a correlation between Somalia and Eastleigh. And whatever happens in Mogadishu directly affects activities and relatives and people here in Eastleigh.
Yeah, rightly put, Ahmed. And one final question, perhaps, Ahmed. Up until now, Al-Shabaab are yet to take responsibility for that attack on Saturday. Maybe some analysts are saying they don't want to lose support in Somalia. So I'm sure you've spoken to people on the ground in Eastleigh. What are they saying exactly about this attack?
I mean, this was a terror attack. I cannot speculate who carried it out, but it has all the hallmarks of Al-Shabaab attack. And I think even Al-Shabaab themselves were not ready for such a magnitude of attack as this. So I think they do not want to lose some kind of support that they have in some sections of Somali community. So I think it's however it's put, it's an abhorrent attack, and it's a cowardice attack, and it's an attack that should be condemned from all angles of the Somali and the international community.
And speaking about the international community, Ahmed, there's a question we did ask our viewers earlier, and I'd like to hear your feedback about this. And do you think the world is giving Somalia enough support, especially at this moment?
Well, I think shame on the world, because there's not enough support. Turkey was actually one of the first countries that came to assist Somalia. Kenya is doing its bit, Djibouti has done its bit, but there was no support that we see when an attack like France or England, when an attack happens in those cities, such support, we did not see such support being given to Somalia. And it's really, really sad.
Yes, and apart from the blood donation initiative, are there any initiatives that you have in store for the people of Somalia?
Well, there is an M-Pesa account, M-Pesa pay bill number that was opened by Kenya Red Cross and the government of Kenya, which is 1111. And I'm urging the people of Kenya to be generous enough and donate to their brothers and sisters in Somalia. On Thursday, the Eastleigh business community, in conjunction with the ulama and clerics, will have some sort of a fundraiser. There will be, I think, a vigil by the youth of Eastleigh on Sunday. So there's a raft of activities that's coming up just to show solidarity and say sorry to our brothers and sisters in Mogadishu.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for your input. That is Ahmed Mohammed, Eastleigh business community leader, coming to us live from Eastleigh. Of course, he is one of the individuals who are leading that Kenyans for Somalia initiative after that brutal attack in Mogadishu. They claimed the lives of about 300 people and 500 more were injured. Now, let's cross over to Togo, where 3 people were killed as violence broke out in Togo's second city, Sokode, after an imam close to the country's main opposition was arrested. Now, the clashes came against a backdrop of anti-government protests led by Tikpi Achadam from the Pan-African National Party, PNP, who has a power base in the northern city. The Imam, Alpha Al-Hassan, is close to opposition leader Tikpi Achadam. It's not clear why he has been arrested up until now. News of the Imam's arrest spread on social media, and protesters quickly started demanding his release, putting up barricades and burning tires on the main national road. The headquarters of Togo Telecom and the post office were looted, and police used tear gas to disperse demonstrators. Opposition parties have held mass protests in Togo to demand an end to President Faure Nassib's rule, saying they have had enough of the Nassib dynasty, which has been in power for the last 50 years. Yes, you heard me right. Now, over to some interesting story now. Since its creation in the year 2004, the Pan-African Parliament has struggled to make its voice heard. And without any real power, some say it is nothing more than a talking shop. Though its motto is, quote-unquote, one Africa, one voice, the reality of Africa's parliament could not be more different. Since its creation in the year 2004, the Pan-African Parliament has struggled to make its voice heard, prompting its deputies to ask themselves at a recent gathering, what are we for? The headquarters are in Midrand, an industrial town halfway between Pretoria and Johannesburg, temporarily located beside a convention center. The parliament has an annual budget of $22 million and meets twice a year for sessions that require 60 interpreters. Parliamentarians' home countries cover the cost of flights, accommodation and food.
It has got no power, so there's no consequences, there's no any implication out of the decisions that are taken here. It's just a forum of people who are just coming to talk, but nothing really happens out of what is being deliberated upon here.
Yeah, it's an option, we'll say it, no problem. Maybe next time, next session, we'll tell them up to now, if we have not achieved it, let's quit. Maybe it will be one of the reasons to push for the countries to sign for the protocol.
It is the building of the United States of Africa, so we have to go step by step.
Clearly, something is amiss there. Now, the notion that elections will most probably not be held before the end of 2017 has led to the re-emergence of a climate of political uncertainty and tension in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, this development comes as United Nations envoy for the country, Maman Sidiko, told the Security Council on Wednesday that the broad consensus achieved among key political actors with the signing of the 31st December 2016 agreement has not been maintained consistently throughout the year. Congo's Electoral Commission says that it will need at least 504 days to organize the poll once voter registration is completed. Enrollment began in parts of Kasai region ravaged by insurrection in mid-September and will take about 3 months. And the electoral body is expected to announce election dates this month.
Discussions have centered on the notion that elections would most probably not be held before the end of 2017, as had been foreseen in the agreement. This has generated renewed political discourse around varying interpretation of the 31st December agreement, particularly the implementation of a transitional arrangement moving forward. This has also, regrettably, led to a re-emergence of a climate of political uncertainty and tensions. Je condamne fermement les attaques par les milices Kamina and Sapu.
I strongly condemn attacks by the Kaimuna and Sapu militia, the recruitment of children and the targeting of schools, churches and other protected sites. Violence must stop and its perpetrators must be held accountable.
Et ses auteurs tenus responsables.
At the present time, the publication of a realistic electoral calendar, the establishment of a budget for the holding of elections, the implementation of pacification measures, and ensuring the respect of fundamental rights and freedoms are the main conditions to advance the political process. In our country, when some people are looking for rebellion and want to have a demonstration and call for rebellion within the manifestation, obviously, this did not follow under democratic freedom of expression. The necessity to maintain public order and public safety here takes precedence over exercising these freedoms.
Now, South Africa's parliament today began an inquiry into alleged corruption at the highest level of government. Whistleblowers and prominent officials are expected to be called to give evidence into what has become known as quote-unquote state capture. It will be an uncomfortable few days for some powerful people in South Africa. Ministers, tycoons, the president's son, and many other witnesses are likely to be summoned and, if they show up, grilled by MPs investigating claims of a giant corruption conspiracy. It is widely alleged that a powerful business family, the Guptas, have bought influence at the highest levels of government in order to win lucrative state contracts. The Guptas have denied such claims, as has their friend, President Jacob Zuma. Some South Africans see a parliamentary inquiry as a poor substitute for police investigations, arrests and trials.
We're obviously delighted, on the one hand, because we've been fighting this case for the last 8.5 years. We have asked court after court to rule that Mr. Jacob Zuma should be prosecuted. He's now going to be prosecuted. He now needs to appear in court and face the 783 charges that were illegally and irrationally dropped in 2009. I think it's worth it for two reasons. Firstly, because somebody who I think is very guilty is now going to have the opportunity to defend himself in a court. But secondly, because it establishes in our law that everybody, whether you're the President of South Africa or an ordinary citizen, is equal before the law.
A very interesting development there in the south of the continent. Now, a huge cleanup operation is underway at the biggest market in Madagascar's capital, that is Antananarivo, as a plague outbreak sweeps the country. The filthy conditions in the southern Amefiloha district make residents worry of further spread of a plague outbreak sweeping the country. The disease has already killed 25 people in Antananarivo alone since August, according to the health ministry. Now, the Indian Ocean island nation is increasingly fearful of the unusually virulent outbreak that has so far killed 54 people nationwide and infected 276 in the capital and its outskirts.
How could we not be scared of the plague? We are in the middle of an epidemic. Of course we are afraid. To me, it's not the bin men's fault, but there are not enough lorries to carry the waste away.
It's really dirty here. It's a big market, so we should move the waste elsewhere. There are a lot of rats and sick people. We should cover the paving stones and pick up the waste every day.
And that reporter story from Madagascar takes us to a very short break right here on Bottomline Africa. But when we come back, we'll have that studio discussion, our discussion tonight, which revolves around African football management as well as the quality of football in this continent. I have our guest ready with us in studio. We have Mr. Nick Mwendwa, the FKF president. We have Mr. Robin Toskin, sports editor from Standard newspaper. And then we're going to be joined live from Ghana by Michael Oti. He's a sports commentator from that West African country, which is also well known to be a powerhouse when it comes to football. There you go. We have our guest ready with us. I'm going to engage them shortly. But for now, we're going to take a very short break. And as we take that break, let's take a look at Events Africa. We'll be right back. Don't go too far.